I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 24, printed in House Report number 115-785, offered by Mr. Foster of Illinois.
Pursuant to House Resolution 964, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Foster, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My straightforward amendment would prohibit the misguided use of taxpayer dollars to attempt to develop a space-based missile defense intercept layer. As you know, the Senate passed version of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2019 tasks the Missile Defense Agency with developing such a concept. Mr. Chairman, we've been here before. The idea of a space-based intercept layer has gone in and out of fashion for the last 30 years, ever since President Reagan called for defending the United States against a massive first strike by developing a strategic defense initiative system commonly known as Star Wars. But every time technologically competent outside experts have looked at this space-based concept, they deem it unworkable, impossibly expensive, vulnerable to simple countermeasures, easy for an opponent to destroy, easy to overwhelm with a small number of enemy missiles, or all of the above. In fact, the former director of the Missile Defense Agency, Admiral Searing, said in 2016 that he had serious concerns about the technical feasibility of interceptors in space and its long-term affordability. In order to reach an incoming ballistic missile during the first few minutes of flight, a large number of interceptors must be stationed in low-altitude orbit, where they will be very easy for an enemy to destroy. A report conducted by the American Physical Society in 2003 concluded that in order to ensure full coverage, a fleet of 1,000 or more orbiting satellites would be required to intercept just a single missile. To put that in perspective, the United States today currently has slightly more than 800 satellites in Earth orbit, and that includes commercial, scientific, and military satellites. The National Academy of Sciences estimated that even an austere and limited network of 650 satellites would cost $300 billion, or roughly 10 times the cost of a ground-based system. Setting aside the massive cost, a space-based missile defense system has inherent vulnerabilities that greatly limit its effectiveness. Even with thousands of interceptors deployed, only a few would be within range to target an incoming missile, and those could easily be overwhelmed by the launch of several missiles from one location. And because interceptors must be stationed in low-altitude orbit, they could easily be detected, tracked, and destroyed. And it is these limitations that led Admiral Searing to conclude that, quote, essential space-based interceptor technologies have been worked on only sporadically over the years and consequently are not feasible to procure, to deploy, to operate in the near or midterm. There is no doubt that a ballistic missile defense, if technologically feasible and economically justifiable, would be an important priority for our national security. So would be the Star Trek warp drive, or the transporter, or if they were not technological fantasies. But as a scientist, as in fact the only PhD physicist in the US Congress, I think that we have to listen to the experts and do our homework before investing hundreds of billions of dollars attempting to develop an unworkable system. I urge my colleagues to join me and vote yes on my amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I claim time in opposition to this amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
As noted by Secretary of Defense Mattis, space is a contested domain by our strategic competitors, just like air, land, and sea. This dangerous amendment would place our country at a disadvantage with our strategic competitors by limiting the work that can be done to continue our efforts in protecting our dominance in space and further from protecting our homeland from intercontinental ballistic missiles. With the significant advances being made today by our adversaries in key areas such as hypersonic weapons and expanding nuclear weapon proliferation, we must not restrict the Defense Department from pursuing options to deploy directed energy in space or any other capability that would result in the possibility of boost phase capability that could be deployed from space. This amendment, Mr. Chairman, is against even the possibility of investigating and going down this road. House authorizers and appropriators understand the importance of employing a layered missile defense capability, and this dangerous amendment would significantly constrain options for developing critical defensive capabilities in a gap of our current ballistic missile defense system. A proponent of boost phase missile defense, General Hyten, the commander of Strategic Command, testified this year that, quote, "The day you can actually shoot a missile down over somebody's head and have that thing drop back down on their heads, that'll be a good day. Because as soon as you drop it back on their heads, that's the last one they're going to launch, especially if there's something nasty on top of it. I think directed energy brings that to bear, although such weapons do not yet exist in the U.S. arsenal," unquote. Finally, I would also point out that the issue of space-based intercept was debated at length last year, passed with bipartisan support in the House Armed Services Committee, and that the National Defense Authorization Act last year passed with broad bipartisan support on the House floor. This year, the Senate Armed Services Committee has also provided broad bipartisan support on this critical technologically development area. Now is not the time to curtail this emerging potential capability. So I would urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I spent most of my career as a high-energy particle physicist and accelerator designer, designing and building complex technical systems. Nothing is less productive as a use of taxpayer money than designing and building a system, attempting to build a system that you know from the outset cannot and will not work. If there was suddenly a magic new technology, then we can revisit this decision. But the fundamental physics and the fundamental numerology of the attack versus defense balance in this has not changed in the last 30 years as we examined this issue. So I think that just because it would be nice if we can magically drop a launched missile back on the enemy's head, if we do not have a plausible technology that could accomplish that, doing paper designs of systems that will not work is a blatant waste of taxpayer money. And so again, I urge all of my colleagues to vote yes on my amendment and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Well, let me just conclude by saying in opposition, if it hasn't been developed yet, you don't know that it doesn't work. We have hundreds or even thousands of bright minds. I appreciate my colleagues' credentials, but we have hundreds of scientists and engineers working in the Missile Defense Agency and at the government-sponsored laboratories and other parts of the defense community in the private sector and the Department of Defense in the government sector. And there are possibilities here that are being pursued that have great promise, have great potential. And I think it would just be the height of foolishness to cut it off all right now when there's not even any money being appropriated for this. It's just even the possibility that the gentleman's trying to cut off when we have potential for something that would be helpful to saving our homeland and making those who want to rain missiles on us have to suffer the consequences of those missiles coming back down on themselves. And so we shouldn't foreclose that possibility and shut the door. So, Mr. Chairman, I would urge a no vote on this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Yeah, can I know how much time I have left?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. I think this all comes down to technical feasibility. Whenever you're thinking of how to spend taxpayer money, you must make a judgment call as to what things are just way out there and are not going to happen in our lifetimes, and things which have a realistic chance of working on the time scale that we're planning for. And when all the experts that you convene to look at this unanimously say that this system makes no sense, then it makes no sense to spend taxpayer money until we get the breakthroughs that might someday make it possible. Thank you.
The gentleman yields.
Yep.
The gentleman from Illinois yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Chairman, I request a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois will be postponed.
Mr. Chairman.
Purpose is the gentleman from Indiana